Right, we're going to talk about a very sad story that happened last week in Germany on the 22nd of January. We had two people who died by another stabbing and several others who have been injured. And we have the suspected child killer here in Aschaffenburg. This is in Germany's Bavaria. He was an asylum seeker with a known history of violence and mental instability, who had traveled across several European nations to enter Germany and was obliged to leave the country by the end of last year. So what happened was that on the 6 days ago, on the 22nd of January, as I said before, there was a daycare center, and teachers from it were taking some really small children out for a walk in the park. And it looks like this suspect was there, deliberately targeting them. He rushed, he attacked them, he stabbed several kids. One died, a 2-year-old died, a 41-year-old man rushed to save what he could save, and he died as well. Then the suspect tried to leave by train, but he was caught very swiftly. So this is just a horrible case, and we are going to talk about the pattern yet again that we see when it comes to blame allocation by the mainstream media on perpetrators of serious violent crime. But
because this is a very clear trend here, isn't there? It amazes me that not every single person in Germany now understands who is doing it and why, and that nobody is safe, let alone small innocent children.
Well, I mean, this is just how we live now. It's just how we live.
Yeah, but
it's like we live in a world with a national lottery, except if your numbers come up, your kids get murdered, yes, and you're all forced to play it.
I will say I have a family in Switzerland, and we visited them a few months ago, and they leave their newborn child to a daycare, and they go for a walk on a daily basis. Yeah. And it's essentially something of this sort. Now, Switzerland, as I'm going to show you, is way more based than Germany on this issue. They actually have a secret. They have laws regarding deportation, just like Germany has, but they actually enforce them.
Well, I hope they're based enough.
Yeah,
amazing what political will can do, isn't it?
Exactly. We will show it in the end, because this is the age where we contrast the effective government and the no, it can't be done government. And I think the more we see people like Bukele, like Millet, like Trump, like the Swiss, actually doing what must be done to protect their own people and to promote common sense, the more people are going to wake up and are going to say, well, listen, just stop giving us these excuses. So this is just a horrible case, and it shows a failure of institutions and people who are in charge of them across all dimensions. Now, he was someone from Afghanistan who sought asylum in Germany. He went to Germany. He entered Germany in 2022. He claimed asylum, but it was denied. So why was he there? That's one question. There was a deportation order, but deportation orders in some countries are like, milk expiration dates. As I say, they expire, and then just business as usual. So he wasn't deported as the order, and the order wasn't enforced. He was accommodated in a former inn in Alsenau in Lower Franconia, and he was involved in several violent offenses. And I think he was institutionalized thrice. So he was known. Now the government tries to say that there was an administrative error and he wasn't deported. But I think that this is a ridiculous excuse.
Well, it's a story as old as time by this point, that governments are unwilling to do the deporting. They're unwilling to get their hands dirty and get lots of these foreign criminals,
not
basically.
Willing to be robust.
Yeah.
I put a tweet out after the Axel, whatever his name is,
Rudakubani
massacre, and I said, look, it's utterly tragic, but by far and away the most tragic thing is that this will happen again and again and again, because our governments tacitly support this kind of action against the native population. And here it is happening again, and it will happen again. And I'll go beyond that. It's quite common in a number of African countries to go into primary schools of Christian children and just commit a total massacre.
Christians are the most persecuted
Yes.
religious people on earth, and
Yes.
most of it happens in Africa.
And I'm telling you, it will happen in Europe. A bunch of these crazies will go into a primary school, and it will be a complete massacre. And basically, what people like us are trying to do is trying to say, wake the hell up before that happens, rather than after
Exactly.
it happens.
And the job of the police is to ensure security and enforce the law. It's not to oversee racial relations, as several pundits are saying.
It's also worth mentioning as well, the people who are willfully keeping a blind eye to this stuff, they're willing to suggest that there are a number, there's a number that they would be happy with of children that you could sacrifice on the altar of diversity to keep these foreign violent populations in the country.
Yes.
Because, of course, if we had, no migration from, say, Africa and the Middle East or Islamic countries, none of this would be happening. And therefore it's preventable. And if it's preventable, by supporting them coming here, you are complicit in their crimes. If you support open borders, if you support these people being here, you are complicit in child murder. It's as simple as that.
One of the things I'd love to do is, if I can get the right data set, is actually work out how much GDP we're getting in exchange for each murder, each rape, each child death, and so on.
Well,
minus.
It could well be a minus, yeah.
The only thing I will say is that the patent says that no amount of children is enough. No amount. This is the main question people should ask politicians and journalists who play the multiculturalist card and say that, well, multiculturalism demands sacrifices. How many are enough? How many must die in order for you to actually admit that there is a problem?
Oh no, I think you're absolutely right. The current set of leaders that we have would gladly accept a mountain of children.
What it basically amounts to is people are afraid to be called racist, but they're so afraid of being called racist that they facilitate the death of children and innocent people. And I think the trade-off is some people that are wrong about something call you a bad word, but the children and the innocent people stay alive. I feel like that is more important than hurty words.
And we have actual human beings, not just words on paper. It isn't just a name on a paper that is that features in the same sentence with the term murder. We have actual flesh and blood human beings, like the 2-year-old boy that was stabbed in this case. Right, so we have here footage of this person standing there after the attack. And also we have several understandable reports about how the entire kindergarten is traumatized. The families of the victims are traumatized, and everyone just thinks that this is a horrific tragedy. It cannot but affect them.
Also, if you could go back to that picture of him, he looks like any number of migrants I've seen in Britain, for example. If he walked past me in the streets of Swindon, I wouldn't think twice, because he looks like a lot of the other people here. And so how are you to know what to expect from one of these people? This is one of the things
why do we have to inflict this on the population? Why? There's no good answer.
You can see a British person, and you generally speaking know, or a German or a Greek, you'll know what beliefs they have and how they conduct themselves. And you can make a guess and conduct your behaviour accordingly. With people from a foreign land that you've not really got much contact with, you can't do that. It's impossible to avoid, which is another part of the real tragedy of this.
Exactly. Right. Here is one other argument that suggests the point that it's not just an administrative error. This comes from today. The Munich Administrative Court has prohibited the deportation of 2 Turkish asylum seekers to Croatia, citing systemic defects in its asylum process and risks of inhumane treatment.
In Croatia's nice.
Very nice.
It's nicer than Turkey, that's for sure. I mean, also, what valid claims do Turks have for asylum?
I
None.
have no idea. I suspect they would say something regarding the Yugoslavian war. They would say that, in that area there were several Christians, and some were really hostile to Muslims. And they could say something really vague on the sort, although I think it was more with Serbia that was the issue.
And half the British working class go on holiday.
But the point is, the point is that they're saying, well, there is a risk of inhumane treatment, but what about the risk of crime on native Europeans? They're willing to take that risk, but they're not willing to take that risk with convicted criminals.
Yeah. I mean,
that's actually partiality that says, I don't care for my population, for native Europeans. I care more about others.
If it was just the risk of crime to one person versus the risk of the criminal being persecuted in their home country, the moral thing to do is always risk the criminal, the person who broke in the country.
Yeah. You don't... this is the equivalent of failing upwards in the moral landscape.
Well, also, is it a risk or an opportunity?
Well, it is an opportunity for the criminal, isn't it?
No. I mean, if we're worried about the risk of a criminal being persecuted, I would say, but we should be happy if a criminal gets persecuted.
That's true, actually, yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Here we have people saying that they express their solidarity towards the victims, and they are saying that these are not isolated incidents. These are no second-class victims. And this is something that is basically very obvious. And we have been saying also, because we have been covering the events in Germany. We covered the Mannheim incident, the Solingen stabbings, the Magdeburg market attack. So we are keeping a close eye on what happens in Germany. And there is a pattern, I see. And this pattern isn't just in Germany. It's across the West. And it has 5 stages. You can have several sub-stages there, but all of it revolves around how to allocate blame when it comes to victims, when it comes to perpetrators of crime, in order to push forward the narrative of multiculturalism within Europe and the West. And stage 1 is a criminal act is committed. Stage 2, politicians express their sympathies to the families of the victims, and they also engage in virtue signaling, saying lessons will be learned, things like that. Stage 3, the crime is portrayed as an isolated incident committed by an individual with mental health problems. Let me say, this is only when the perpetrator is a member of a group that the left says it is oppressed or is an ally of the left, politically speaking.
Yes, otherwise, because if it's ever an individual on the right, it's representative.
Yeah, but
and
not
there needs
just...
to be more censorship and monitoring of right-wing groups.
Or even with
but
this,
also the threshold is much lower, because in this case we're talking about an actual crime. But when it comes to someone else, even criticizing multiculturalism is a non-crime hate incident. And it suggests a deeper pattern of far-right extremism. They're blowing it out of proportions. Stage number 4, mainstream media and politicians will scaremonger about the far right. Stage number 5, forget and move on. We see this playing along all the time. Right, so here we had the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz saying that the murder of a 2-year-old child by an Afghan national in Aschaffenburg is a possible terrorist act. He says he's tired of seeing such acts of violence here and every few weeks by perpetrators who actually came to us to find protection here.
Well, that's not true. Find economic opportunity, yeah. But
he is Chancellor of Germany for about 4 years now. There are going to be elections in less than a month, on the 23rd of February. So he says this because of the elections.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't sound like him.
Yeah. Here we have Nancy Faeser, the Interior Minister, who is expressing shock. She says, we're deeply shocked by the terrible acts of violence in Aschaffenburg. My thoughts and my deepest sympathy are with the parents of the child who was killed, for whom there could be no more terrible news. Now, if we go on the...
So hang on. It's all right to be appalled. You cannot be shocked by this, because you know that this is going to happen every week or week and a half.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what Remix News says here in this article. They say that they show her response on every incident as of late.
Yeah.
And she constantly says she's very shocked. And I think she's also one of those politicians who are saying we should burn the knives, and that's how stabbings are gonna.
I also really dislike these cookie cutter responses. I feel like you've got to tailor what you say when something like this happens to the event and be specific. These sort of meaningless platitudes just suggest to me that you don't actually care about the tragedy.
She probably didn't even write it. She's probably got a staffer, and she agreed a format for the first one, and it's just like just copy and paste the last one and change it.
So
the level of indifference is on show there.
Yeah.
This is stage 2. Stage 3 is all over the news when they're saying that he had mental health issues. I will say this because it came after, because this was published after we gave the links, right after. The Germany's federal health minister, Karl Lauterbach, claims that as many as 30% of asylum seekers entering Germany are mentally ill, and warned that without therapy, nobody can deny that they represent a threat. So this is, unless something is done about this means basically you are allowed to talk about it. You are allowed to talk about some communities being overrepresented in crime, but only insofar as the morale of the story is that the native Germans and the native Europeans and every other equivalent incident in Europe are going to be taxed even more in order to pay for the psychological support of these people.
So the Germans are going to be assembling an army of therapists to deal with its foreign murderer problem.
That was stage 3. Here we have a combination of stage 2 and stage 4. We have the Brandenburg Gate being lit and also scaremongering about the far right. Sea of Lights against the far right, Compact and Fridays for Future invite you to the Brandenburg Gate, a sign against Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Herbert Kickl and Alice Weidel. On Saturday, a large demonstration against the global shift to the right will take place in Berlin.
So because they had, at one point, the Austrian painter, they've got to suffer infinite murders now.
No, here we have Naomi Seibt, who writes, migrant kills child, leftist protest against the far right. In response to the Aschaffenburg attack, the left has organized party-like protests against anyone who called for deportations. So how much is enough? It's never enough for them. That's the
Norm Macdonald joke where he says, my fear if someone detonates a dirty bomb over New York City, the blowback to innocent Muslims will be the real tragedy. I'm paraphrasing it, I'm butchering it because I'm not a professional comedian, but the sentiment is there, right? That these people go away from a tragedy where an illegal murdered children, and they're like, well, the real problem is the far right. Who hate child murder.
They love their ideas more than they love the victims they profess to sympathize with.
Mm-hmm. It's inhuman, is what it is.
Right, and here we are going to show the ridiculousness of the Green Party, which is guilty of doublethink and doublespeak in this case. Every party is, but I'll target the Greens specifically. They double down on migration with new call to ease family reunification, and they're saying Europe will be destroyed if Germany drastically tightens border security. So unless you don't have a border policy, and without border policy, you don't have a country. So unless you don't have a country, you're going to be destroyed.
Unless you destroy yourselves, you'll be destroyed.
So either way, that's all their vision. Europe is to be destroyed. And the only thing that these politicians are doing is micromanaging destruction and social decline. And here we...
Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
And here we have the leader of the German Green Party who speaks against migration. His daughter was sexually harassed, and he condemns the country's migration policies for causing massive social...
Okay, so
that was late September.
Credit to him, at least when his own daughter was sexually harassed, then he understood. But why couldn't he understand the day before his own daughter was subject to this?
Because leftists don't care about other people. It's only when it happens to their... It's like with New York being announced a sanctuary city, with New York's mayor Eric Adams was constantly saying how woke he is and how New York City is to be a sanctuary one. But after all the buses started flooding New York City, he was blaming Biden and the federal government.
A bit like Anna Kasparian. It wasn't until that she was sort of attacked herself that she flipped.
And Dan, do you know what other gem they've given to Germany? And Josh, you know what else? Because these people are not interested in solving any problem. No. They want to micromanage social decline.
Don't tell me.
Violent crime in Germany is rising at least 10% on almost every category. A lot of violent crimes happen in trains and train stations, and the Greens were saying, well, we need to have only women-only train carriages. Yeah. As if this is going to help. And also as if someone goes in and says, well, I'm a woman.
Yes. What if the rapist and the murderer, as well as breaking the rules about not raping and murdering, also breaks the rule about not going into the women's carriage?
It's like putting all of the chickens in the coop for the fox,
Yes.
isn't it? It's ridiculous.
Right, and I just wanted to end with this. Switzerland achieves highest deportation rate in Europe in 2024, and its rate is astounding, especially in comparison to other EU laggards like France and Germany. It's close to 60%.
You've got to make it 100% Switzerland.
They say
Although it went up 18% from last year, didn't it?
Yeah,
so they're on the right track. You know, it just needs to go up another 40%.
Yeah. So here the Swiss, they removed 7,000 asylum seekers in 2024. Their secret was basically they enforced their laws.
No way.
Well
If you enforce your laws, you don't have to have foreign criminals. My goodness. If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.